And welcome to Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and you're not seeing things. This is even more Fruits Basket stuff. And for this, I have LeighClipse here again. Say hi.
Hi.
We figured out that 2.5 hours wasn't enough. So we've decided to record a supplemental set for even more Fruits Basket discussion centered on I believe the minor characters and some other just things that we may not have touched on because I think we just bounced around from things to things. And Leigh wanted to talk about some characters specifically, and I had some that I wanted to go over. So we'll just sit and chat a little bit longer and see what comes up and flesh out this amazing show even more.
Well, we spent so much time talking about Toru and how much of an impact she had on everybody, which is okay.
Mm, yeah,
And we spent a lot of time talking about Akito and how much of an impact Akito had on what happened.
that was my jam.
Um,
I love that dark
the
shit.
reason why it had to be Kyo, though, like I know that you said it in the beginning, they set it up to make it look like she'd end up with Yuki, but the
Hmm.
reason why it had to be Kyo is because, for one thing, Toru has always been a diehard Year of the Cat fan.
Hmm.
The other thing, Kyo just he had that promise with Kyoko that he would always be there to take care of her if something were to happen. And it's just hard not to love Toru. She's so cute. As soon as Kyo met her, he was just hopelessly just he was under her spell as soon as he saw her.
It's amazing what stupid people can do to other people. It's like, why are you so dumb? I can't help it.
Oh my, you know what one of the cutest scenes with Kyo was that day when they were welcoming all the new first year students in and Momiji and Haru were there and everything. Or she had gone looking for them and um these two first year boys were looking at her. She was just standing against the wall, spacing out a little. And they're like, man, she looks cute. I bet she's a real airhead.
Hmm.
And Kyo heard how they were talking about her, and he just went over, pounded the wall above her head, and
Just get lost.
glared at them like, this is mine, no touchy. Basically, he just kind of claimed his territory right there.
Yeah.
And they turned and ran the other way. So, that was one of the cutest Kyo moments ever.
Yeah. But I think specifically what you wanted to mention with Yuki was it wasn't
There's a reason
love
why.
relationship.
Yeah, there's a reason why Yuki and Toru didn't end up together. And yeah, part of it is because as Yuki went on, he did realize that his feelings were Toru were the way he would feel about um a mom
Or sister,
if
I
if he
think.
had a good mom.
Yeah.
He felt for Toru the feelings that he would have felt for his mother if his mother was a decent mother.
God, what good she was.
Yeah, yeah. We'll just leave Toru's mother in the trash heap where she belongs.
Or his mother, Yuki's.
I meant Yuki's mother, yes.
Yes,
Oh my
Kyoko's
god,
great.
Kyoko was amazing. Kyoko was a great
Yes.
mom. Oh my god. There's a
Yeah.
scene in the prelude where she freaks out because she opened a drawer and it bonked Toru's head just the tiniest little bit and
Oh.
Toru fell on her butt. And it was so cute watching Kyoko freak out over possibly hurting Toru. Oh god. It was adorable. But anyway, Yuki ended up meeting this girl in the student council. She was the new treasurer, and her name was Machi. Machi had a very bad problem. Her mother was so strict and controlling. She demanded complete perfection. She wanted Machi to have perfect grades, perfect personality, perfect social life, perfect everything. If anything was even the tiniest little bit out of place or less than perfect, Machi was berated and almost abused. Like, her mother was so strict and controlling, it wasn't funny. Poor Machi actually said that she felt like she was walking like she was like a tightrope walker trying to stay on the tightrope of perfection. And it got to the point where anything perfect threw her off balance. If anything looked too perfect, she would freak out and start to feel like the walls were closing in on her. That's why she would make messes on purpose. And it got to the point where as soon as her mother had a son, um, they accused Machi of something really terrible. She thought
Hmm.
she thought her little brother might be cold and she tried to cover him up with a blanket. And they saw her putting the blanket on him and assumed she was trying to kill him.
That's just
So they sent her they gave her money and sent her to live on her own in an apartment somewhere away from them. And that's
and she
why
never cleaned it.
she lives in a messy apartment and Manabe has to secretly visit her without their parents knowing. So they and now they're at the same high school, but I'm not sure if their parents know that. But Yuki can sympathize with her in a very unique way. Yuki was also he also had to live under that burden of perfection because if there was anything about him that made Akito unhappy, she would lash out. So he understood Machi's feelings. And he also appreciated that she was one of the few people who could actually see through and understand his feelings. Like, don't get me wrong, he loves Toru. He really does love her and he loves the fact that she gives him unconditional love the way a parent would. But Toru had a very happy childhood and he didn't. So as much as she's able to give him unconditional love and acceptance, she doesn't always understand what he's been through. Machi does. Machi understands exactly what he's been through in his life because she's more or less been through the same kind of thing. They have the same type of trauma, and they help each other heal. That's why they're such a good match.
Yeah, and I again, it's one of those things where opposites can attract. I mean, the Kyo and Toru thing makes sense,
One
but
of
at the same time, you have this example of Yuki and Machi being kind of the same,
Yuki
but in a different
understands her so well. Did you see that scene where Kimmy slides the box of chalk in front of her and without even looking
specifically
off
reference it.
of
He's like,
without even looking up from his paper, he immediately reaches into the box and just smashes one in half.
they, they focus on it almost as if they don't focus on it. It's just like,
Just
yeah.
without even looking up from his paper, he just unspokenly gives her this support that he knew she would need. Because this
Hmm.
perfect box of chalk just got slid in front of her, and she would have started freaking out if it had stayed perfect. So he
Also,
just
apologies for the ambulance that's coming by.
so he did just without even having to think about it. He just reached over and broke a piece of chalk and made it okay for her.
Yeah. Speaking of not perfect, I can't record anything without ambulances coming by. Living in a city is rough. Anyway,
I have it
but
worse
yeah,
than you. I've got people that go running up and down the hallway outside like right now.
Oh boy, that's great.
Yep.
But yeah, I think what worked was that they spent time building that up through the entire season. They didn't leave it as, oh, we need somebody to fall for Yuki because he's left out. No, it's something they build to, and they
Yeah.
make it a point. And Manabe, as I think I stated this in the first podcast, was he's not so secretly wanting it to happen. He would, leer behind the wall and wait for them to kiss, and his fucking phone would go off and be like, oh, shit, they noticed me.
Yep.
But
That's exactly what
but
he did, the little pervert.
because again, they, as you mentioned, they spent an episode and a half talking about Yuki's past and his situation, and Manabe is just sitting there going,
I
dude,
think
that
the
sucks.
reason I think the reason why Manabe wanted to know about his feelings for Toru so bad was because he knew that Machi was starting to really like him and he didn't want Yuki to hurt Machi if Yuki already
Mm.
had a girlfriend.
Yeah, and it was the opposite. Manabe like had a comment about Toru and is like, "You touch her, you die."
Uh-huh.
It's just like, mm.
Which
But
which Manabe wouldn't have gotten anywhere with Toru anyway, considering Kyo is in the
no,
picture.
no. Um, let's see. Um, see, we go from Yuki and Machi, and then we get into the Soma characters. And I know there were a few that we talked on
We did talk
Hattori,
a little bit
Shigure, and
about
whatnot, but
we did talk a little bit about Momiji, but we didn't really get into what was driving him either.
right, we talked about the idiot traveler and we talked about his jokiness, but
Mo
there's more to it.
Momiji was a very, very outwardly he was a very happy child looking guy, but he was he stayed cheerful in spite of what was going on in his life. He had a very, very tragic thing happen to him too.
Everybody has tragedy in this
Poor
show.
all of the Somas are tragic in some
God.
way. Poor Momiji had to live with the fact that his mother completely rejected his existence when she discovered his curse as a baby. She actually tried to kill herself because she was ashamed of having brought such a thing into the world, as she put it. She basically just said over and over and over again, I can't believe I brought that thing into the world. And the only way that they were able to finally give her some peace was for Hattori to erase her memories of ever having him. So poor Momiji had to live knowing that his mother would rather him have never been born and choosing to forget him. And his father went on and had another child with Momiji's mother, and poor Momiji's not even allowed to know her. He has a little sister that he's not allowed to know because no because Momiji being part of their happy family would probably bring those memories back. Even if at first they tried to lie and say they were taking care of him because his parents died or something. Those memories could eventually come back because they're not gone, they're just suppressed. It's like the way Hattori describes it, he says it's like an extreme form of hypnotism where he suggests those memories be repressed and the person just complies, you know? But Momiji is not allowed to have anything to do with his family. He can see his father, but because his father knows about him and accepts him, and that's the only he only gets to see his father when his father is at work. So he goes to his father's office building after school and hangs out there, and that's how he met Toru the first time. Toru was leaving and he greeted her in German, and she ran off because she was running late, and he found a flyer for the school cultural fair and decided he wanted to go visit that because he had heard about Toru and he wanted to get to know her. So, and then she became his best friend basically. What, oh my God. And the cutest thing, he doesn't know this, but his little sister Momo has been listening to him playing the violin. He plays the violin. His little sister has been listening to him and would really like him to be her big brother. She's such a big fan of his that she even wanted to take violin lessons too. And she finds Toru on the grounds one night and helps her sneak in and says, "Can you please tell him for me that I really like him and ask him if he could please be my big brother?" So Toru does, and it makes him so incredibly happy. And then soon after that, he grows up over the summer vacation, stops being a cutesy little boy, and then after that, his curse breaks. And he's able to like walk by and have a conversation with his mother without her freaking out. Although she still doesn't know that he's her son. But if something happens and she gets her memories back, he'll be able to hug her without her freaking out because he's normal now.
Yeah, I found personally the scene, and I know I keep bringing up the Akito thing again, but I remember just the interactions when whether he was in his child size or the more adult size. Um, well, a couple of things. I remember he is the one that tells Kyo about Toru, and it says, "If you don't do it, I will." Just to
Oh, yeah.
poke and prod him, just to accept it, because he actually was getting to that point,
Oh,
um,
yeah. He's got
subtly.
major feelings for Toru.
But I also think it's like his reaction to the entire thing, because there is that like subtle, like everybody just kind of feels like numb, but it was always more like I don't feel anything, but I want, like, it wasn't, it was more amicable, if that makes any sense. Like, he didn't want Akito to feel annoyed or angry. It's more just, I don't feel anything. I don't want you to feel bad, so I'll just leave, But it wasn't like antagonistic.
Well,
It was, because I don't think he could be antagonistic
when
if he
his
wanted to.
Momiji's too cute and sweet to be antagonistic. But no, when his curse lifted, the second that it was starting to break, Akito ran to him, begged him to stay, and he said that it was it was something new for him. He'd never felt like this before. He needed time to think. And she accepted that. She gave him time to think. He came to her the next day and told her that he's had a long time to think about it because he pretty much stayed up all night, I guess. That
I mean, I would have.
he thought it over, and that he could not stay with her. He could not promise to stay with her forever the way Kurino did because there are things that he wants to go out and do with his life, and he wants the freedom to be able to do that. And hearing him say that he would not stay with her for eternity, is what caused the snap that led to the final act.
Mm,
That's what led her to go stab Kurino because she
I
was
guess that's a
actually
logical reaction to things.
in her own way, she was trying to set him free too because she
Mm,
realized that him staying with her was out of pity and out of a sense of duty and not because he really wanted to.
yeah. Um,
And
I know. Oh, go ahead.
honestly, like I had said in the last in our last conversation, Kurano did not do her any favors by staying with her.
No.
He enabled her behavior to the point where it got as bad as it did. He sure
Yeah.
as hell didn't do her any favors when his curse lifted. Um, and then, to the point where, fast forward to Toru in the hospital, she's out there hesitant to go in to visit anyone that's in the hospital because she's afraid of how they'll all react to her. And Momiji just, it's a moment of pity, yeah, but he makes the first step and says, he hands her a handkerchief for her face and sits down and tells her the story of the idiot traveler because he wants to explain Toru's goodness in a way that she'd understand. And then, as he said, he's like, as soon as you hear this story, you'll probably want to go see Toru for yourself.
Mm.
Sure enough, that's exactly what she did. She even met Uo and Hana, and
And
basically
that
gave
was
her,
the
and she gave her blessing for Uo to go be with Kurano
um
because she's decided to stop being selfish.
so yeah, the next ones I can field this one. This one was the one I felt for was the Haru and Isuzu situation. Mentioned before, Haru is the ox, kind
And
of dumb but
Isuzu,
observant.
Isuzu is the horse. She's really
She is
pretty and
just
wild.
yeah, she just does what she wants to do without consequences, but uh, is probably the most responsible of kind of the smaller group of minor characters of wanting things to change. A lot of it is because Haru and Isuzu grew up together and fell for each other, and damn the consequences. Like
They're
they
the only
understood,
two.
hey,
They're the only two that were not only in love, but they had a sexual thing going on too.
mhm, yeah. Because at first I thought it was weird that Haru would keep going back and keep trying, almost to the point where I even said, could she just get a restraining order on this guy? It's starting to be a little creepy. More and more, it started to make a little bit more sense why he would keep going back to her and why it would make more sense. And she slowly started being around other people like Toru and Shigure and, what her reasons were.
She was
Isuzu's entire thing was she was the brunt of Akito's wrath and would meet with Shigure in secret and go, are you trying to break the curse? Do you know an answer? What's going on? Is this a thing? So
mm-hmm.
so Isuzu is working on her own. She does not want to be around people. She doesn't want to be friends with anybody. She doesn't want to be with Haru at all, and is willing to accept that. Haru doesn't. So a lot of his arc
No, she
is,
wants to be with Haru. That's why she's so desperate to break the curse. She wants
yeah,
to be with him just as much as he wants to be with her. But her dumping him the way she did, she's trying to protect him from what happened to her.
yeah. And we talked about the Akito situations, leaving
Because
her and pushing her up the.
as soon as Akito figured out there was something between the two of them, she took it out on Isuzu because of how pretty she is. And for anyone who doesn't know, Isuzu's nickname in the Soma family is Rin, which gets a little confusing because you've got Akito's mother
Yes,
Ren.
yeah. That
So if you call her by her nickname, it's Rin. And basically, as soon as Akito found out that Hatsuharu had feelings for Rin, she took it out on her. Like, she literally sat there and beat this poor girl up and tossed her out a window. And Isuzu landed on a really hard rock, had to be in the hospital for a long time. But she kept running away from the hospital because even her own family couldn't handle her. and she had actually gone to stay with Kagura and her mother because her own family couldn't handle her anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
Kagura's parent, or Itsu's parents, were really indifferent towards what she needed. They treated her like she didn't exist. They treated her like everything was her fault.
Yay. The only good family, the only good mother was Kagura's mother and Toru's mother. Everybody else was a piece of shit. It's
Oh no
weird.
no 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 no.
Oh
There
wait,
were
Hero's
Hiro's mother
family.
was good, and so was Kisa's.
Oh yeah.
Hiro and Kisa had good moms.
Yeah.
Kagura had a
I
good
guess
mom.
Ritsu to an extent maybe, but that
Ritsu
was
had
kind of
okay. Ritsu's mom.
it was more played for laughs.
It was played for laughs, but Ritsu's parents traumatized him in a different way.
Eh.
They're the ones who turned him into this sobbing, quivering mass of apologies that he is.
Ugh. Ugh. Ugh.
But being with Mitsu, he's started to evolve past all that. If you notice in the end, he was literally dressed like a boy. He had cut his hair.
Yay.
He had cut his hair into a boyish haircut, and he was giving Kagura all of his kimonos.
Yeah. Getting back to the Isuzu and Haru thing, one of the few things is that Toru's bullheadedness just breaks her down, and Isuzu like slowly finds a friend because it sure seemed to me like that's what she was looking for,
She was
other than
she was looking for
talking to Shigure.
someone. She was looking for someone to hug her and tell her that everything would be okay,
Because it wasn't.
because it wasn't, and no one had ever done that for her other than Haru.
Mm-hmm.
She was just looking for someone, the way Yuki was. She was just looking for some love and acceptance. And that's what and she was afraid to approach
Mm-hmm.
Toru for that. She had a feeling that she would just, as soon as she saw Toru just sitting there doing laundry, just folding laundry, she had a feeling that if she let herself, she would absolutely fall for Toru.
Yes.
The way
Haru.
the way Yuki fell for getting affection from her.
Mm-hmm.
She knew that if she let herself get close enough to Toru, she would start to depend on that affection, and she wanted to be fierce and independent like a horse.
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly
Yeah.
tell you a lot of horses are like that.
I've
It's a
never been around
zodiac
a horse.
behavior. Dude, I was born in the year of the horse.
No, I've never been around a horse. I've never even climbed on one, so I'm not sure. The closest I've been to a horse is seeing the True Lies movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger riding a horse into an elevator.
I rode a pony once when I was 6. Does that count?
Bet more than I ever have. Um, but Haru, again, it's more of a Suzu story, but Haru is he ends up befriending more people. He is actually going to school. He's actually causing problems in school, whether he's wanting to or not. Specifically, like his other half is just, I don't give a fuck about you. I will fight you. So he does. Like he'll spend early moments of the runtime fighting Yuki or Kyo
Oh my
or
god, remember
messing
him?
up the school. Yeah.
Oh god. Oh my god. When the school president had an issue with when we talked about this before, when the school president had an issue with Momiji wearing a girl's uniform top.
Mm-hmm.
He also had an issue with Haru's hair being black and white. He was assuming that
That's
because his
so
roots were
dumb.
black that he was bleaching the top white, and he
No.
demanded proof that his hair really was that color naturally.
Hey, you want to see him? I'll show you.
Two guesses what the hell Haru did to show his proof.
Yeah, that guy will never be the same again. That guy is so dumb.
That scream though, it was so funny.
Well, he learned how to move. That's all I'm going to say.
Haru dragged that poor
Um,
Haru dragged that little idiot into the bathroom, and the next thing all you hear is
yeah, yeah. Do you want a lollipop? I no, Momiji, I don't. not right now.
That was one of
Getting
the
too
funnier
mentally scarred.
episodes. It was so hilarious.
Um, let's see. We did that. Oh yeah, Hiro and Kisa. Uh, again, Hiro gets better as the show goes on
Hero,
slowly.
okay, the reason why Hero's a little shit when we're first introduced to him is because he is completely drop dead jealous of Toru.
Yes. And I'm so prim and proper, and I've got everything, and it's just, ugh, just you're
He's
not as great as you think you are.
he's a spoiled little boy,
Mm-hmm.
and he really, really, really loves Kisa. And he made the mistake of going to Akito and telling Akito that he loved Kisa. So
The
Akito,
Haru and Isuzu thing sure worked.
so Akito did what Akito does, and she attacked Kisa.
That
And
bitch.
that's why, so as a result of that, he decided the best way he could protect Kisa from Akito in the future was to stop hanging around her so much and not give Akito a reason to hate her. And then that led to Kisa being lonely and not having anyone to talk to while she was being bullied at school.
Yeah, she turned into a mute, I
And
think, at first.
she was so bullied that even when she did try to talk, she was completely ignored, and that led to her not talking at all. She stopped talking. She went completely mute. And then eventually she got so miserable, she ran away from her mother. Her mother was completely just stressed out, worrying. She was exhausted. She was so tired. But all she wanted was the best thing for her daughter. She never gave up on her daughter at all. She just needed a break. Which and when they finally found Kisa, the episode where they introduced the character, Haru had found her hiding in a bush. She had transformed into her little tiger self, which is super cute.
Mm.
And they Haru took her to Shigeru's house, and to- Toru tried to sympathize with her because she's so adorable. But Kisa didn't want to hear it and just bit Toru.
Mm.
And rather than give up, Toru actually sat there and put up with the pain of having her fingers in this poor little
She
tiger's
bit
mouth.
me.
She tried to pet Kisa and make her feel better and got her hands chomped for her trouble. And when Kisa's mother showed up and was like, "That's not nice, Kisa. Please let her go." And then started, "Why didn't you tell me?" Blah blah blah. Toru proved her understanding of the situation by explaining it to Kisa's mother that she didn't want to worry her mother. She didn't want she didn't have the words to tell her mother what was going on. Because Toru herself was bullied as a kid too. So she was able to explain it in a way that proved she completely understood and empathized with what Kisa was going through. And Kisa, she felt like someone finally understood her, and she actually had someone who not only understood but accepted her the way she was. So you know, she started following Toru around like a little puppy, and
She became a fangirl.
she totally loved Toru after that. And then, finally Haru and Yuki had a talk with her and told her that, she could either choose to stay mute or she could try to work on everything and get better. And she and Yuki made a deal that they would both work on themselves. And she started talking, and they went that night when Kisa and Yuki went to go pick Toru up from work and walk her home. Toru was so happy that Kisa was actually talking. It was the cutest thing ever. Total sister vibes. In the original run, Kisa used to call Toru Sissy. I'm so glad that they ditched that.
Oh, thank God. Yeah. That
She
would have
never
been
ever referred to her as Toru. It was always, why do you hate Sissy so much? So, Hiro comes in on this and he resents Toru for being able to help Kisa when he couldn't.
sorry, my internet died on me.
It's okay. Right. So basically, Hiro resents that Toru was able to help when he couldn't. He wanted to be the one that helped Kisa get through everything, but Toru took that from him. So he was completely jealous of the bond that Toru and Kisa had when it's something that he wanted to be able to have too. And eventually, you know, he comes across as this obnoxious little shit. And then at the height of his obnoxious behavior, Toru saw right through all the bullshit and told him exactly how she could understand how he was feeling because, X, Y, and Z. She told him a story, which led to him realizing she's really not as bad as he thought. So he softened up towards her little by little, to the point where he wasn't outwardly rude to her anymore. Although he still criticized her for, like, not thinking for herself as much.
Mm,
But even that is something that Toru has been working on.
yeah. Um, let's see. Oh, here's somebody we've almost completely neglected. Agura.
Yes, Kagura, we didn't talk about her a lot either.
Yeah, I think we talked about Ayame for like half a second, and then Agura was just like, she exists somewhere. She likes Kyo somewhere, and just dropped it.
Kagura
Um,
Kagura is when we first meet Kagura in the show, she's declared herself Kyo's fiance. She's like, we're going to be married someday. You promised. And Kyo's like, because you were holding a knife at me. So Kagura is very, very, very enthusiastic, I guess you could say, about her love for Kyo,
very.
to the point where she's punching him through walls and doors
She
and
keeps messing
floors.
up my house. Yeah, that's what we basically mentioned was Kagura breaks people's houses and likes
She even
Kyo.
breaks her own mother's house. God, at one
If they
point
weren't so
she kicks the door in her mother's living room down and she's like, God, it's only been a month since you broke the last one.
um I think one of the things with Kagura is a lot of her is tied to Kyo's actual transformation. And
She's got it in her head that she always thought that, if she could be friends with the cat, then it would
mm,
mean that she wasn't a bad person. So she reached out to Kyo and started playing with him when they were little. She was the first person who had ever, like, actually come up to him and tried to make friends with him, even though he was the cat. So then, in her own head, it started to, and one day she took his bracelet off of him because she was trying to try it on for herself. And he was afraid of what would happen if it came off. So he was fighting her. He didn't want her to take the bracelet, and she finally got it off of him. And he transformed into his real form, and she ran away. But and she feels bad for that, and she has decided that to make it up to him, she would devote her life to him. She would always be there for him. She would love him when no one else would, so that he would never have to go through life alone. She's she's trying to delude herself into thinking that she accepts his other form. She doesn't really. Because Toru goes and actually does what she didn't do. When Kyo has his transformation into his real form, Toru actually does go after him and bring him back. Kagura didn't do that, and she regrets not having done it. But she realizes at that moment that what Kyo needs is not her. That what he needs is Toru. And even Isuzu touches on that because Isuzu lives in Kagura's house. She's like, when are you going to stop playing at love? And at first, like, she doesn't want to admit that that's what she's doing, but later on, she actually does admit that that's exactly what she's been doing. She's been justifying what she's been doing in her head as, if I can love Kyo, then that means I'm not really a bad person.
Is it ever explained? Like, I don't think Kagura ever gets, unlike other people, I don't think Kagura ever gets like, you're a waste of space. You're a piece of shit. Like, her
No,
family isn't. Yeah, it's in her own head. That's what's weird. A lot of this is self-inflicted just
Kagura's
by
got a.
being.
She really was just afraid of. She was afraid of being a bad person, like sometimes people are. Even I am to
Mhm.
some extent.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm afraid that
So
I'm a terrible person because, you guys don't ever see this because I'm not on this show that often. I'm human just like everyone else.
people have lives.
People
Imagine
have
that.
flaws, and I'm no
People do
different.
things in their lives instead of being on Twitter all day. Imagine that.
I'm not on Twitter.
Oh God, I gave that up. I'm glad.
But no, I'm not on Twitter ever.
No,
So, yeah. I don't know if I came out ahead of that or
no,
not. I don't know.
no. But as we were saying,
But yeah, I'm just like everyone else out there. I have my flaws. I try to hide them. Once you get to know me, you'll find them. You'll find them out. But um excuse me. It's but yeah, Kagura is she's got her own little insecurities because her temper keeps her from making a lot of friends.
gee,
She's
I
very
wonder why.
destructive. She wanted to at least be able to rationalize herself in the Soma family as, maybe I'm not as bad as everyone else if I can at least love the cat. Because she hears how everyone talks about the cat. Kyo's own Kyo's father actually wants to lock him away, the way all the other cats in the past have been. And I'm talking Kyo's real father, not his adopted one.
But I
'Cause
don't think we even talked about that whole adoptive father part too much.
we really didn't. Um,
So now's a good
Kyo
time,
was
I guess.
Kyo when Kyo was like 4 or 5, his mother couldn't handle the strain of her marriage anymore and she killed herself.
And and
And
his father liked it
his
a lot. He
father,
totally did. I swear.
his father literally
Oh,
blamed everything on Kyo.
oh my God! Like
That
that
if
last
it,
scene in like the second to last episode was just him just being a complete fucking
uh-huh.
head case. Ugh.
And
It's your fault I'm miserable. Like, dude.
this one man in the Soma family, his name is Kazuma Soma. His grandfather had been the previous cat. And when he was a child, he saw he saw his grandfather through the bars of the door, and his grandfather offered him a hard-boiled egg, and he refused to take it because the cat is filthy. And his grandfather understood. It pained him, but he understood. And after that, the cat died. Not They never said exactly how much time it was after that, but the cat died eventually. And Kazuma felt so guilty for how he had treated his own grandfather. So he decided that the next time there was going to be that the next time the cat was around in the Zodiac, that he would treat the cat better. And then it turns out the next cat is this frightened little boy who just lost his mother. And his father is yelling obscenities at him all the time and blaming him for the problem when his father was the actual problem. So he swore that he would take this little boy and raise him as his own because it was his way of atoning for how awfully he had treated his grandfather the one time he had gotten to meet him. And that's how it started. It started with wanting to atone for how bad he was in the past. But as time went on, he genuinely developed fatherly feelings for Kyo. He literally hoped that one day Kyo would call him father. But Kyo's never done that. Although Kyo finally did acknowledge him as a father at the end, and that was everything Kazuma wanted. It was so cute. But they had a real affectionate father-son bond. And it was really nice that Kyo at least had that one parent that loved him. But
Mm,
Kyo was always afraid of messing up, so he didn't always go straight home after school. And that was how he met Kyoko. And then he formed a friendship with her, but had never told her his name. She just had a nickname for him. She used to call him Squirt because he never told her his name.
yeah.
And we brought ourselves back to Kyo.
Yeah. Let's see. There's not too much left. I think the last one we haven't talked about much was IMA. We did it more in passing. Um,
Oh
but
yeah, Ayame is Yuki's older brother. He's older than Yuki by somewhere around 10 or 12
like
years
five
or
or ten
so.
years, yeah,
It's
something
it's more than
long.
10
Jeez,
cuz Ayame is, let's see.
it's like 28 or
He's
30 or something
he's
like that.
27 and
Okay.
Yuki is about 16 or 17. So there's about 10 or 11, maybe 12 years between the two of them. Somewhere between 10 and 12 years difference in their age. Ayame was already he was already in the Zodiac inner circle when Yuki was born. He already had best friends to hang out with every day. He didn't need to worry about what his mom was doing and whether his mom had a baby or not. He was completely indifferent to Yuki. At some point, um, you know, Yuki becomes old enough to be given to Akito for a playmate. And he's like,
Yeah.
yay, Akito has a playmate. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, just the wording of that, which is true, by the way. That's what it really was.
So he was still completely indifferent. And then when it got to the point where Yuki was old enough to want to escape from his prison, Akito had him locked in a dark room and would basically feed all this hate and despair on him. And beat him up sometimes too. Like it was all kinds of abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse.
Hmm.
Um Yuki was being tortured in that dark room. And he was begging anyone that would talk to him. He actually grabbed Aya's hand one day and begged him for help, and Aya just turned a blind eye and went on with his day. He was completely indifferent to Yuki. In the end, Shigure ended up helping him because Haru went to Shigure and begged for assistance getting Yuki out of there. Haru was the only one who really cared about what happened to Yuki. He would sneak in and Isuzu would stand guard to make sure that nobody was coming. And if someone was coming, she would sound the alarm and say, okay, it's time for us to leave. Just so that they wouldn't get caught in Yuki's room talking to him. Because nobody was supposed to be in there. So, for Haru to go and beg someone to help get Yuki out of there, Shigure listened, and he did. He got Yuki out of there. And then later on, when Ayame first comes and meets Toru, he takes her away for lunch. He tells her that that's his biggest regret, was not ever having been there for Yuki, not having a relationship with Yuki. Yuki is his younger brother, and they're basically strangers. And he wants to change that. He feels terrible for how he's acted in the past, and he wants to have an actual relationship with his brother. Only Yuki doesn't want that because he's holding a grudge.
Mm.
But little by little, Yuki and Ayame do form a bond. It's one of Ayame's got this outrageous personality that you cannot suppress for anything. And
Oh, you don't say.
Yuki has the realization that he's just going to have to learn how to tolerate it somehow. The way Hattori does.
Yes.
So, oh my god, I totally loved that scene where poor Yuki got smacked with a broken vase
Oh.
at the banquet because of Akito. And Ayame's like, "Don't worry, Yuki, you won't die. I will get you to Hattori. Like, remember the promise we made each other on the banks of the river or whatever." Yuki is sitting there holding something to his face. It's like, literally none of that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and Hattori is just sitting there going, "This is so stupid. Just stop."
Well, IMA is nothing if not melodramatic and over the top.
Yeah, because
But that's part of his
some of the show
charm.
had to have comic relief, and that's what his role was for most of it. But again, I do appreciate that he does have reasons for being there.
Mhm.
And it does feel fleshed out. Um, as far as they could, again, because imagine, like, we've been talking about 8 to 10 characters that had to compete with airtime with the main Soma family, the main villain, the main characters who had love
And
interests, and then you have the school bits, and then all of Toru's school friends. It's
IMA was no
mind-boggling.
different. He had a love interest too.
Yeah.
There was someone that he had his eye on who had the exact same hobbies and interests as him, and he loved her. And she loved him too.
I do like that they didn't like force that too much. Like they already kind of just were a thing. Mine and IMA were just together mostly as employee and whatnot, but they were also in love, and it was like, oh, okay.
But
They
they
didn't
hadn't
overthink it.
acknowledged it to each other until that one day
Right.
when IMA felt the curse lift and he just jumped up and hugged her and told her that he was completely head over heels in love with her. He
Yeah,
literally,
they
his exact words were, "I was born to love you." That was so
all
sweet.
that.
That's poetry right there.
Yeah, because I think with this supplemental thing, and unless there was other characters you wanted to talk about or anything else that you were mentioning, for me, it's you're having to juggle so many things. And I do this sometimes with D&D because I'm making a campaign and whatever, and really what you're doing is you're competing for time with people. And it's like, well, you don't want to overburden the main story, but you want something else to go on. And you're like, well, what about this thing? We need this thing to have some room to breathe, and I think that's what Fruits Basket does great is they're building all these characters to mean something and they're giving them something to do that immediately when you look at them, it doesn't just feel like a waste of space. That you're looking at them and it's like, okay, there's a reason that they're acting the way they are. And it all comes back full
And they
circle to the main thing.
and as much as there's all the heavy drama and emotion and everything, they balance it out really well with the funny.
Mhm. Yeah, and it doesn't feel like the comedy. I think the original, and we spoke about this before, was gonna be filler and kind of bleh.
Yeah.
But I always felt that the comedy, there were certain times where I'm just like, but by and large, you see a comedic scene that's there for a reason, or there's something that a person is saying or doing in the backdrop that is hilarious. So, like they took the time and the effort. I talked about Shigure reading the paper and laughing while everybody's arguing, or the do you want a lollipop? I keep bringing it up because it's
Oh,
like
one of
they're
the
doing
things
this.
one of the things that I absolutely loved was when Shigure shows a book that he's written, and it was this trashy looking romance novel called Summer Sigh. And later on throughout the show, you see other characters reading that book.
Yeah, and then
And
the
it's
whole thing
so
with Mitsuru being, Shigure's woeful assistant and editor is like, why are you doing this to me? I don't want this job, but I have to. Why don't you just do the thing? And
she's
Shigure
like,
is
why do
just,
you keep doing this to me? Why can't you just write your pages and turn them in on time, Sensei?
and he's just like, well, no, I'm out eating. I'm out eating octopus. I'm out eating with somebody I know from the
And when,
family. It's
oh
a
my
family
God,
trip.
when someone makes him finally just admit to her what he's doing and that he's actually done the work, he's like, but now what am I going to do for entertainment?
Yes, I was
He
totally goofing
tortures her
off until
like
you
this
forced me
because
to
it's
work.
entertaining to him.
Yeah, and it fits in with his character of being
Oh
just
my God.
completely like, uh,
Dude, remember in the final one or two episodes when he tells her that he's retiring from writing and she jumps up and down in happiness?
yeah, and she's like, "Yay, I get to be with somebody who actually cares for me," and that's where the whole Ritsu thing shows up, and it's just like, oh god, it's great.
And
Um,
Rachel was so happy for her.
but they spend time giving you all of these competing things so that you can like even if like say the main characters may or may not be your thing, there's the side character. It's like I've said before, my favorite character was Shigure, and it stayed true through the entire thing. And I even found a fondness for Akito, as fucked up a narrative as that was, you know
Mm-hmm.
because it was just because that's just the kind of person I am. I kind of dig that sort of like there's
Because
something there,
Akito's not
um
completely blameless in everything that she did, but
now.
what she did was very well explained. Like her
And the
reasonings
fact that they
behind it.
showed it too gave it weight.
The fact that
But
they
again,
act
like,
Yeah, the fact that they actually did go into the detail about why she was the way she was.
mhm,
And even the fact that she wasn't even able to be her real gender in front of anyone until the end.
mhm. Yeah, and again, being because it's like, well, then you have Hattori gets an episode, or Kagura would get an episode, or Isuzu would get like 2 or 3 episodes to her, or even Hanajima or Uo-chan would get like 3 episodes to them, or they would cut back to it, or it would be one of these things is like even with like Hiro or Ritsu, I'd be sitting there going, I don't really like them, but then later on I'd be like, I get it now. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like even if I'm not getting because that is something that is important in especially writing a show is like, do you like a character? Well, maybe I don't, but I can understand them now. If you leave that sort of thing hanging, it becomes kind of a cloud that lets a show feel like it just left something there, not necessarily a plot hole, but something that is just like, you could have done something more if you had let it breathe. And Fruits Basket is nothing if not able to let something breathe long enough and then keep going at something until it starts making sense. Nothing in the show And this is something I talked about in the first episode. Nothing is done without reason. And I was floored by that because it is so rare to have something just mean something. Whether it's for a good or a bad reason, it's there for a reason. So even if it's not always the best thing to watch, there's always a reason behind it. And it floors me.
Like the reason why Toru is so polite to everybody. Do you know why that
Yes.
is?
Hmm. It's trying to live up to an expectation that she persists at. Her
It was
family situation, yeah, it's
her
trying to be her
father.
father, basically.
Yeah, she was trying to basically take over um and be like her father so that her mother would stop being so depressed
You know,
about her father being gone.
yeah, and
Like her mother was so distraught over losing her husband that she literally was like locking herself up in a room and crying for days at a
yeah,
time.
and then you'd have like little asides, like
Yeah.
Uotani thinking that Kyoko was this like super amazing badass chick from the old days, and then she finally meets her, and she's just this mother who's trying to be a mother, and it doesn't dawn on her until like an episode later is like, you know, she is a badass, but she's trying to be a mother now. It's like, oh, I can accept that,
Yeah.
and that's what she ends up doing. Little things like they didn't have to do any of that. They could have just focused on the Soma thing. They could have focused on Toru, and they could have brought in little sides in there. But again, they don't. They just sit here and go, every character's here for a reason if you wait on it.
And
And even if you're not like the fan, like at first, like Hiro or Ritsu, I'm just like, get them off the screen. They're annoying. You're like, no. After a while, I'm like,
they
oh,
mellow.
they're there for, yeah. They
Like it,
mellow out, or
at first, like they seem a little extreme in their behaviors, but they mellow.
mhm,
They mellow out
yeah,
a little.
and then they find their place in the story bit by bit. Was there anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk
Um,
about? 'Cause there have been a lot of things for sure.
I know. I'm trying to think. It's
Um,
like what else did we forget about from the last time?
I honestly, personally, I can't think of anything. I mean, we've talked about every main character, um, and even every side character. Um,
Well, we didn't really talk
and
much about the rivalry between Kyo and Yuki either.
um, I,
I
I,
mean, besides the general stuff like stupid rat,
I,
stupid cat.
I think for them, it's part of the love triangle, and then eventually it just becomes it's about the Akito situation. Like Kyo is going to be left in limbo, in caged up, and then it's almost like they don't see each other as people. They think they
They
both caused each other's problems, and it's like no, it's like they didn't.
Well, in Kyo's mind, all of his problems were caused by the rat. This time around, the rat is just a little boy named Yuki, so that's who gets all
Mm-hmm.
his hate.
Yeah.
But for Yuki, he's got all this hate placed on him for being the rat, and he feels completely useless. He sees Kyo, and while, yeah, Kyo's not ideal, he wishes that he had Kyo's freedom. He really envies that Kyo has freedom to some extent. And, seeing him in school, even, Yuki, in his mind, he's just like, I wish I could be more like Kyo. Kyo can make friends really easily. He doesn't realize it, but he does. And, Kyo, in his mind, he's like, I wish I could be more cool and collected like Yuki and not have everything bother me so much. They both have there are things about each other that they admire. They just don't communicate to let each other know that, especially since they're supposed to hate each other. And then later on, as the show goes on, they actually do mellow towards each other quite a bit. And it finally gets to the point where, at the end, after Toru has come clean to Kyo and said that she really loves him, and then he takes off. He takes off. Yuki goes after him because he wants to finally have it out with Kyo once and for all about
I
how
don't think they
stupid
ever
he's
do
being.
have that like final like
They
they were building
do.
it up.
They do actually have that conversation.
Well, it's more of a
After,
conversation. I think it was like I think they were leading to Akito saying you have to beat the rat,
well,
right? And I was
that
expecting
was Akito being Akito. She
I know,
decided
but
that
I was
if
kind of
she decided to dangle Kyo's freedom in his face to try to finally get him to put up or shut up, I guess you could say.
because again, I think that's what I was trying to get at. As I thought they were gonna lead up because they were doing it over and over. I was kind of expecting Kyo and Yuki to have like one more punch up, and it ended up being more Kyo's running away from his feelings, and Yuki just sits there and goes, "Dude, you're a fucking idiot. Stop it." So I think it shows maturity, but it's also like kind of weird that's how it ended up. Because they were building oh my God, every time I punch you and I always lose. I always fight you and I always lose. I always fight you and I always lose. It felt like, okay, there's going to be like one more final fight of sorts, and then they don't do it. Um, to its credit, it is an interesting tack to take because they were trying
Hmm.
to tell a different kind of story. Um, because I was expecting Kyo to just do it, but no, they just actually go in an opposite direction. Akito doesn't even do the whole "I'm going to
No,
age him up." No, she just is like,
no.
nope.
When
I've
part
I've
of
seen my
her,
I've seen my error. I just no.
yeah, part of her
You know.
apologizing to everyone is not only she gave everyone their freedom, and when Kyo's father was yelling for someone to come take Kyo and lock him up, the
Mm.
servants came and said, he's wanting us to go get him. Should we? And she's like, no, I'll go myself because there's some things I need to talk to him about anyway.
I was kind of hoping they would have done an Akito and Kyo's father scene
I really
just for
wanted to
her to
see that
slap the
too.
shit out of him. That would have been great.
I wanted to see
Um,
that myself. I wanted to see her get in his face and tell him to start taking responsibility for his own shit and
that or kick him in the balls.
stop heaping everything on his son because
Yeah.
his son is a fully accepted member of the family and has been given his freedom.
Mm. But but again, I do think that is part of this show's charm is that it does lead to some things, but then at the end it does throw curveballs,
Yeah.
but it doesn't seem out of place.
Well, in Fruits
Other shows
Basket,
would have done that.
one thing I do remember about Fruits Basket, another, is that um, Toru and Kyo's son does say something about how his grandfather is Kurino and how Kyo and his real father never really ever got along.
Mm.
So at some point, Kyo's real father just stops being part of the picture.
Yeah.
Like he can't accept Kyo being allowed to be free. And I think at some point, I think I think Akito might, like, this is just my wishful thinking. This is how I hope it goes. I hope she got in his face and told him that if he could not let go, that she was going to stop giving him financial support.
Oh,
Because I think that's the only reason that he's been allowed to sit on his ass avoiding work and drink
yeah.
all day long is because she has been providing financial support to him and Kyo.
Mm.
Because if you remember, Shigure said something about how all of the Zodiacs had a bank account that was receiving an allowance from the main estate every month.
Imagine how much that was. Good
It's
lord.
living expenses, so that they
Yeah.
can take care of themselves.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, Fruits Basket is one of those things I don't think you could ever remake or retry again if they wanted to, because the way they remade it already is just
It's so good.
yeah. Um, but I do feel like this supplemental episode does help flesh things out even more. Um, but yeah, I mean, what can I really say other than yeah, if we haven't convinced you yet, the show is not for you because there's no
Yeah.
like non-committance. There's no this could work for some people, but not others. No, it's
This
you watch a few episodes, you're probably gonna enjoy it for the remainder. If you don't, you're just not. Um,
and just
but we've done what we could, I think.
and and oh my god, I'm such a huge Kyo and Toru shipper. Just the way his face softens when he looks at her, it's just heart melting.
So, yeah, I think that will do for us. Um, but yeah, this was a supplemental episode because there was way too much to talk about. God, imagine if we do like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, we'd be here for days.
Oh god,
Um,
don't even get me started on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. You really don't want that.
no, no, I think we'll leave it at that as a funny thing. But for now, that's it from us. But for Leigh, this has been Citizen Strife, and I hope you've enjoyed these 2 episodes of Fruits Basket. And if you haven't seen it, you should. If you have seen it and want to see it again, do it because it's worth your time. But
Mm-hmm.
that'll be it from us, and we'll see you next time. Citizen Strife and LeighClipse signing off.